Welcome to Bacademia, a podcast so educational two professors could be hosting it. Hi, I'm Dr. Danielle Dick McGue, and joining me is Dr. Bill Henneman.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of Bacademia. And you may notice that we have two guests and no D3, Dr. Dick McGough. She is not able to be here, so everyone send her positive vibes, and she should be back next week. But today, we have two very special guests. We have our first current UNI student, Elle Boeding, who is the NISG president. She's a political communications major. And what else do you want to tell us about yourself, Elle?
Yeah, so I am in my fourth year here at UNI. I'll graduate in May. I'm studying political communications, and my minors are women and gender studies and politics and law. I am bachelor adjacent. I would say my roommates are very into it. And I used to watch it religiously with my mom when I was in high school. And then my residents last year when I was an RA loved The Bachelor. And so it made it super easy for me to plan programs, though they were not necessarily educational. We did have lots of good pizza and bachelor nights that, you know, checked off my requirement to have programs. And so I've gotten into the show and I'm all caught up now. And so I am really ready to go in on this with you all.
If only you had this podcast, you could have been way educational, because this is very educational, guys.
Yeah.
And then we have a guest host filling in for D3 today, and Hanna, who is UNI alumni. She is new to the Bachelor universe, and she's actually such a good friend, one of my very good friends, that she started watching just because of the podcast. And so she is text me before we included her in our watching pod. Now she comes to our house and watches it. We've got like 3 people that we allow into the house because of COVID, and Kim is one. She is the director of development for the College of Education at UNI. What else do you want to tell us, Kim?
So I actually have seen another season of The Bachelorette. So okay. I started watching the Hanna season, even though she spells her name wrong, because her name is Hanna, and that is my last name. And so I got to experience the disaster dumpster fire that was Luke, the best example of toxic masculinity, I think, possible on TV at the time. So I am enjoying it. I definitely, I'm ready to talk about how annoying it is that they keep talking about how old Clare is, because Clare and I are the exact same age and I'm not old. So let's do this. I'm excited.
All right. So we start off every episode with our question of the week. So this one is most embarrassing thing you've ever said on a date.
I can go first.
Go for it.
So I was going to get coffee with a guy over the summer, and I hadn't felt super well like the previous week, and I was like, hey, like maybe I'm not going to be able to go. I'm going to get tested for COVID, and like we'll see if I feel better. And so I got tested, and like my test came back negative, and I was like, yeah, so like we're good to, you know, spend some time together now and go grab a coffee. And he was like, how was the COVID test? And my COVID test experience was terrible. Like they like put it too far up my nose, and I have like a really, like, my nose is very sensitive, and so blood like ran down the back of my throat.
Oh, no.
And oh my gosh.
I like described this in detail to this man, and he was like horrified and like so horrified. And it was like I you know, I was just too far into the story at this point, and like I'm also just a very like descriptive person, and so I was explaining this whole thing, and he was like, oh.
That's awesome.
So we're friends.
Got one, Kim?
I do. It's actually started making out with someone that that ended up being one of my longest relationships. And he goes, wow, you're a really good kisser. And I said, thanks. I watch a lot of HBO, which is probably not what you're supposed to say in that situation. But I mean, I was in college during Sex and the City. I would say HBO definitely educated me on some things. So that is what came out of my mouth. He stuck around for quite a while after that, so I guess he approved of HBO. But yeah, I definitely maybe that shouldn't have been what I said. I did say thank you, so I guess I was polite, but yeah.
At least it was HBO and not late night Cinemax.
Right?
Yeah, that would have been
It wasn't,
way
thanks,
worse.
I watched Cinemax.
The most embarrassing thing I've probably ever done is I'm really bad with names. And so I went on a date and I called a girl by the wrong name. And then it like got in my head. And so then I think I maybe called her 3 wrong names. Her name was Katie when I was in Ireland. And I think I called her Kelly, Kristen, Kara, and it's like it hit a point where it's like I just couldn't, and she was getting very so there was no second date.
I mean,
Rightfully so.
you kind of got it right.
Rightfully so. I did not deserve a second date. Yeah. So okay. Episode in one word.
Speedo.
Speedo. Ooh.
I would just say like oof.
I'm gonna go with upgrade. I'm going with upgrade. I feel
good,
like
actually.
this has been an upgrade. Although Danielle did text me and said that switching to Tayshia and then switching back to Clare and then back to Tayshia is like the most 2020 thing that could have happened.
Right?
You know, it's like you've got this new person, she's engaged, and then they're like, but let's go back to Clare.
Well, and I remember when we were watching it, all of us went, oh God, this better not be an hour and 20 minutes of those two, because that is not what any of us want.
Yeah. All right. So let's get on to the episode. So Tayshia makes an entrance. Thoughts on the guys' reactions? What do you think?
I think they were like so mind boggled. They were like, oh, she's gorgeous.
Mm-hmm. She walked in with that dress, which was amazing. That dress was amazing. And you could just see all their faces light up like, thank God we stayed. Thank God we're going to have this woman now. And yeah, they seemed very excited to see her.
So you bring up a good point. So some of the guys were talking about how they're hung up on Clare. You feel like they were still hung up?
I don't think so.
No.
The amount of men that like unloaded their emotional baggage onto Tayshia though was like so annoying. Every single one of them that did that should have been automatically disqualified. Like that is not her fault that like Clare sucks. Like it's not her fault at all. And you know, it just that made me so mad. I was like, this woman did not come here to listen to you complain.
And on the first, I mean, technically their first interactions with her are kind of a first date. And so that is not, you don't release your crazy, your politics, or your baggage on the first date, or you shouldn't, because otherwise there probably won't be a second. And so it was kind of like, why don't you just ask her questions about herself and tell her about you, but don't talk. Clare should be done. We should not be talking about Clare anymore once Tayshia's on camera.
Yeah, so that's a really good point. So I got my extra credit really early on in the episode. So here we go. A little bit about the economics of dating. So what we find when we do research is that when people decide, and so this is kind of fitting something that applies to typical dating relationships with the Bachelor and the Bachelorette, when people are going to break up or they're going to change to another partner, what we find is that they actually go through this kind of cost benefit analysis in their mind, where they look and see, is this person more or less better than the person I'm with? And so they're going to look at things like, how attractive are they? What do they bring to the table? And also, what do I give up by leaving the person that I'm with? And so that's one of the reasons why people tend to stay, is that you invest so much time and effort into somebody, even if they're really attractive. It's hard to, if you really like their family members, maybe you have pets, you're going to have to divide up your pets. You may own a house, you may have joint accounts, and all of that goes into this kind of efficiency of, should I leave? Now the guys, obviously, and we've had some debates on this via social media with my friends and everything, is how long did they know Clare? Because it was like maybe 6 or 7 days. So it's how much can you invest in that relationship? And I think that's why you saw everybody but Blake and Jason pivot really quick.
Yeah.
And I also think Jason's just finding a whole bunch of new emotions. Like he had angry and sad, and now he's got like more angry, less sad?
I think that he discovered for the first time in his life emotion and feelings that are separate from athletics, which I think is a very hard thing for folks that are in the world of sports and then leave the world of sports. And I'm saying this with no actual data or proof to show that, but he just seemed so unhinged after Clare left, and they had one date that was granted a 2-hour therapy session, but my gosh, his attachment to her was so solid after just that one date that I wasn't surprised that he did not stick around.
So do you think he just never had anyone ask him his feelings, or do you think he's never had anyone encourage those? Or
that was my initial thought, was that like he'd never had someone encourage or like lead that conversation for him, which like is pretty common with a lot of men. You know, they just don't have anyone that provides a safe space for them to do that. And she did, like, it really, like, the space that she created was really safe, and they were very vulnerable, which is super special. But also, like, dude, you're in your 30s. It is time. Like, go to therapy.
My only concern is that when you play armchair therapist, you do not have the skills
right
that help people, like, and I feel like he was a good example of that, where they opened the Pandora's box of emotions and then it was just like,
and she left.
Gone, and now he's just like,
Yeah.
I feel all these things.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, and for Blake, like, he bought her, you know, he bought a book about Alzheimer's to like understand like her mom better. And, you know, I saw a lot on social media that was like, oh, Blake really got the short end of the stick on this. And I was like, he bought a book. Like, that's nice and all, but like, I'm gonna need a little bit more than that before I really feel that he has truly not gotten anything out of this experience. Like, the bar is literally on the floor for men to not have to do anything.
So honestly,
and sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I might be jumping ahead
You're
a little
the
bit in the
co-host.
conversation. That's true.
Yeah, take over.
I might be jumping ahead in the conversation a little bit, but his eyes got like crazy last night. Like, he just, when they were all standing and Tayshia was talking to some of the other men, and when he was talking with her,
We're talking about Jason or Blake? Sorry.
Blake.
Okay.
Sorry, I switched to Blake.
No, you're fine.
His eyes were kind of terrifying. Like, I don't know what was going on in his brain, but he had like crazy, scary, I can't handle things eyes.
So a brief side note, my wife was all in on Blake to start. She's also a gerontologist. So she's really into older adults and dementia. And so when he said that, like, I was afraid she was going to like just walk out the door, start emailing Blake and be like, see you later, Bill. Like, this is the new, I've upgraded to him. Okay. So we done with the guy still hung up on Clare. Let's talk about the difference between Clare and Tayshia. And so shout out to my mom. Yes, my mom does listen to this, Danelle Henniger, and she emailed a question, and she wanted to know, how did they pick Tayshia after Clare, because they're so different in personality. Aside from the mechanics of how she got there, which I'm still not sure of, any thoughts on that?
So I listened to the other Bachelorette podcast.
Yeah, Kim cheats on us.
I cheat a little bit. She was on their show, and it sounds like there were multiple women that they contacted to come on, and she kind of made them wait. Like, she said she needed to take time. So I don't know if they had other people in the backup, because she told them she gave them 48 hours that she needed. And I think that if they're maybe they had all different personalities of women, and that she maybe was the one that said yes first, or was the one they really wanted. But it sounds like there was multiple women in the running to come. So they must have known immediately that Clare wasn't gonna work.
Which people were like, oh, the producers hate this. I still maintain the producers love this. Like, this is ratings gold. Like, the last thing they want is one more, like, so you all probably didn't watch Pilot Pete, but one of the last Bachelors. Oh, you did. Yeah. He was nothing. Like, he had no opinion. You never said anything interesting. Like girls would be like, I love you, and be like, I like you. And
Yeah, you're great.
You know, I dated a pilot and that kind of seems on brand. So
how about the connection with the guys, the new guys? Anything, let's see. Did it seem like there was a lot of talk about how little connection the guys had with Claire? I feel like there was a point where they pivoted from the two guys had a big connection, but then there was a point where they kind of seemed to start talking about how they didn't have a connection when they did their like, little interviews with the camera. We got head shakes.
I don't know if they had enough time with Claire to actually make connections. Because even when they were all together, she was with Dale or sneaking off to talk in their hotel room with Dale. Sorry, that's air quotes for the folks listening. So I don't know that they even had a chance.
Look at how good of a pitch-in co-host
Yeah.
Kim is. Yeah, she doesn't leave dead air time. Man. I feel like Danielle's gonna hear this and be like, sorry, Bill, you're out. Or bring new guys. So let's talk about the new guys. Anyone stick out? Anyone stick out for good or bad?
I hate Noah's mustache.
Yeah.
I like Noah's mustache.
Yeah, no. Also, any man under the age of like 27 or 28 like shouldn't be allowed on this show. Like they're not emotionally intelligent. Like they are not mature enough. Like no woman deserves any of the men that we have seen under the age of 27. Like keep them out.
I have said this before in my life that most guys like probably need to be just like put on a farm until they're like 27 and then like harvested back out when they can like understand. What about women? Do you think women under the age of 27 should be on the show? Or is it just like no adult under the age of 27 has a right to be thinking about marriage up to
So
that?
I have a strict no marriage until 30. I did have a strict no marriage until 30 rule. And then I bypassed that by about a decade. But I just don't think people are still figuring themselves out in their 20s. And I don't think you should get married while you're still trying to figure out we're still trying to figure out who we are in our 30s and 40s too. But I think there's so much of a change that happens between 20 and 30 that you shouldn't settle down yet.
And I think so much of like what's being pushed onto you like before 25, like in terms of marriage, is things that like your parents want or like societal expectations versus, you know, what you actually want. And you're not developed enough as an adult to know what an adult would want. So, I think we see so many of these people get married really, really young, and then they're like, oh, we are not the same anymore, and then they get divorced, and and I mean that's neither here nor there, and it is what it is. But it makes me very uncomfortable that so many really young people are on this show, because it just doesn't make any sense. And then also they always have like weird jobs when they're that young.
Yes.
Well, none of them have like
They're not
a
jobs.
lot of them don't have real jobs. They're like former football player, social media influencer. But we're jumping a little bit ahead. But you kind of saw that with Brendan and Tayshia's date, where they both had been divorced.
Mm-hmm.
They had a very adult conversation about that, and kind of, here's what I learned. It happened too early. I think that's a really good point. So
I want to go back to your question about which dude stuck out. I think that Spencer is on the show to be on the show. I do not think that he has any interest in actually making a connection with Tayshia.
That's the one that he got the first impression rose, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because she thought he was
pissed off all the guys.
Yeah.
Okay. What leads you to believe this? He got a lot of love on social media, by the way. Like people,
did he? Well,
oh, man,
whatever.
I think he is really good.
He keeps looking at the camera, and he's doing like the Office,
like the dad from Modern Family.
Yeah, or like just the Jim Halpert reactions to the camera. Like he knows where the camera is at all times, and he's definitely. I think he's not. As much as any of them are there to really fall in love, I don't think that he is there to fall in love, unless it's to be the next Bachelor so that he can then fall in love.
He's not there for the right reasons.
I don't think so.
It's going to come out. It's going to come out. They're going to say it. How do we feel about the intros? There weren't like the zany, weird intros this time. Granted, there was only 5 guys that came in, but did we miss the intros?
I honestly don't like the weird intros. Like it's very obviously for production, and like that one guy that came in a straitjacket, I was like, this is like really off color, not funny, weird. Like that kind of stuff never lands well. And I think you have to be like a certain level of attractive. Like in this show, like you have to be at like an 8 to 10 in like the looks range if we're going off numerical values, in order to pull one of those off and like still have like public response be positive.
Okay.
I thought that Peter looked like Danny from New Kids on the Block, to the point where I can't take him seriously now, because every time he talks or his face is on camera, I just think it's Danny from New Kids on the Block.
I feel like all of our older listeners, like listeners over a certain age, will be like, oh yeah. And then everyone who Elle brings in.
I know. Ellie's like, who is that? What is that?
No, I know who that is.
Okay, thank goodness.
Oh, okay. Wow. I like it. We talked about Spencer. Anything to close him out, him getting the first impression rose. I felt like that was his goal. He showed up. He wanted the first impression rose. Got it. He is good looking though.
He's very convincing.
Yeah, he is.
Attractive.
You know.
He's Bachelorette attractive.
Right.
Oh.
Plays good on TV, but I don't know that he's like.
Yeah, go into depth. I want to hear.
I mean, like the Bachelor guys, all in my very limited experience, all kind of look. They have a look. They're all like, we saw it when they took their shirts off. There's no like Jim who is a teacher, like they're all like super buff and super ripped, and their chests are bigger than most women's, but they're muscle. And it's just like, they just have like hair and that weird 5 o'clock shadow that isn't really 5 o'clock shadow because they clearly work at it. So I don't know. He fits in with that look.
I feel like there's like 3 looks. That you've got like the Blake, which is like the burly guy.
Yes.
And you've got the like really ripped like guy that clearly puts a ton of work into his like shaving his chest, but then he's got a beard. And then there's like kind of the catch-all, the rest of the guys that are in there.
Don't forget about the guys with glasses
right.
that have dogs, like there's like one specific type of man on The Bachelor that like is, really sensitive. And it's like, I love to read. This is a letter from my mom that she wrote for you, like, ugh.
Yep. Agree.
All right, here we go. Clare and Blake. I have 2 questions and then we're moving on, which I would like to do. So Danielle always says she loves a good love story and she's really into it. And so she is much more pro Clare and Blake. I really like a good breakup story. I'm here for people crying. And so this is even worse that I'm running the show today. I feel like you got the parent who has like no sense of like parenthood here. So thoughts on Dale's level of commitment after the interview? That's been the big thing that we've talked a lot about. How committed do we think he is to this?
I'm like kind of worried for him because like in the previous episode, they're like, so today's the day. And he was like, huh? And I think that still has like kind of carried on. Like, I was kind of waiting for him to be like, help me. Like,
Blinking towards the camera. Like,
he is not excited about babies. Like she's like, what's next? And she's like, babies. And he just kind of went, what have I done? I've made a huge mistake. And it bothers, and we've talked about this a little bit, but it bothered me that she kept saying, he showed up. That's the bare minimum in a relationship. Bottom, that's the first thing you do. Like, if that is why she's marrying him, because he showed up, I hope they have a really long engagement and that they can get a lot of other stuff figured out. Well, because they also didn't have each other's phone numbers until after they were engaged, and that's weird too.
Yeah, I mean, like, literally, she had no real reason for why she wanted to marry him. She just kept saying, like, he's it. He's the one. Right. And I honestly think that she had, like, created this whole fantasy in her head over, I mean, we all definitely did that during quarantine. Like, I got very into TikTok, and, like, I very well could have, found myself very invested in one of the TikTok people's relationships. And so like, I think she just built this whole story in her head, and then nobody else had a chance.
Yep.
And, she's like, yeah, he showed up, like he protects me. But like, then she's also like, I didn't spend, 39 years single, to take abuse from men like that. And I'm like, so like, which one do you want to be? Like, do you want to be protected, or are you like this empowered, like strong woman? Because if all you want is marriage and babies, like that's totally okay. Just own it.
Well, and protect you from what? It's not like there are bears coming after you. I don't understand that. Protect you from.
I like that you went to bears.
Always. Like, were you being hurt by someone? Are you like being protected against an aunt who keeps yelling at you because you're single? Like, what is he protecting you from? I don't know.
So I have two research kind of comments on that. One, two of the best predictors of success in a relationship are people's feelings on how you divide housework. So agreement,
Yep.
It doesn't have to be equitability in housework. So there is this interesting study where what we find is that French women tend to do way more housework because they assume that their men are inept at it, but they are much happier with the split of labor. Women tend to do, in the US, tend to do less housework, but they tend to be more annoyed because they see their men as being able to do that split of labor. So what we find is that you need to be in agreement, and then money management. And I just feel like in 7 days, you have no idea on either of those things. Like what a person is willing to do, what their beliefs are. So I feel like that's probably something they really need to talk about it. And then the other thing is, man, that baby question, that's a big one that gets in the way of people's relationships. And some of it, we talked about this at our house, that she is 39. And so there's probably, if they want to have biological children, there's probably a bit of a clock on that.
Right.
But he definitely doesn't seem sold. Like he definitely skirted that issue every time they asked. And I feel like that's going to come to a head at some point. And then they posted something on social media. Again, Elle, you're shaking your head. Did you? I can't remember exactly what it was, but what was it?
Yeah, I just looked at it. It was, oh gosh.
Well,
It was like, oh God, here, 1 second.
well, and she keeps looking, and I don't know, I've never been engaged, so I don't know if this is a thing, but she kept looking at her ring while Ellie's looking. Well, she kept looking at her ring and like showing it to the camera. Like, look at this giant rock I have on my hand. Like, I'm a little worried that she's more excited about the ring and the wedding than the actual marriage, which I think is a problem that happens with a lot of people.
I don't think this is not a specific to her thing. This is a lot of people, I think, especially they hit a certain age and they're like, I want to have kids. I need to start making, concessions.
Yeah.
Well, and
Not just settle just because you want to have kids.
Yeah. Well, and like the socialization of women, like that's a huge part of it. And I can't be mad at her, can't blame her for just thinking that way, because she talked about it really early on in the season of like, her mom calling her and saying like, when are you getting married, and that kind of stuff. And her mom, and her state of Alzheimer's and dementia, that's the thing that she's thinking of still. And that just goes to show like the value that we put on this. Are we talking about the picture in the snow?
No, I was talking about, I think she posted a picture and it said lots of baby talk. And it was just like, oh, man.
Oh no. Yeah. Oh no.
Where's this snow picture though?
It's on Instagram.
Okay.
And the caption is, "You are pure magic, baby," sparkle emoji. "My comfort, my warmth, my safest place."
Ooh.
That is gross. I hate that. I hate everything about that post.
Like, just get a blanket. Like, get a heated blanket. Like, love yourself. Go to therapy. I'm gonna say that again. These people all.
Yeah. It is a pretty background. I just found the picture on Instagram too. It's a very beautiful posed fake picture.
Correct.
On Instagram.
I feel like a lot of Clare is, and this again is not a this is more of a societal comment. It is very much, she is worried about how the world sees her. And so she's doing things to make this very nice outward appearance. I think the problem is it's easy to do that if you're a random person on Instagram. She went on a TV show, and so I feel like everyone is seeing just enough to be like, oh God, is this for real? Is this really what's happening? So, all right. Anything else to add about Clare and Blake?
I wish them the best. I wish them a very long engagement.
Oh yeah. Here's what I would say, just as a little advice to Clare and Blake. As having the experience of saying, because my family loves Elaine, when are you going to get married? When are you going to get married? When are you going to get married? And this is not specific to anyone in my family, grandma, but the second we got engaged, then it was, when are you going to get married? Then it was, when are you going to have kids? And so it's like, you find which one annoys you the least, and you just stay in that area for as long as possible before your family bullies you into the next stage of whatever. So
that's awesome.
I don't know if that's awesome. It's sad. There's a fine line between sad and awesome a lot of
That's true. That's true.
Okay, so we're back to Tayshia and all of the men. They get a pool date. What could go wrong? They're going to fight over girls. We haven't learned anything. So what do you guys think about these physical dates? I can't remember. And Elle, you seem like you got a pretty good background. Do you remember them ever making the women like physically? Have they done it?
Yes. Yeah. There were a couple that were like, oh gosh, I feel like I'm like vividly remembering like a mud wrestling type of thing.
Okay.
And I feel like they did football when what's his name, the pro football player.
Oh, I can't remember his name, but yeah, I know you're talking about. Yeah.
They did sports ball things. And that was they did like drills and stuff like that, and they put them in like the world's shortest shorts and like the knee-high socks, you know.
I do remember.
Always.
Yeah. And so the Speedos thing is, honestly, I'm kind of happy about the Speedos just for like equity's sake. Because if they were just doing that to the women, like, I mean, the show is already kind of not super nice to women. And so it makes me feel a little bit better that they're objectifying the men, honestly.
Well, and it was better to see them in Speedos than have the jock straps make another appearance.
Yeah.
Because that's problematic.
I still maintain that there is nothing attractive about a jock strap. Like when Claire was like, oh, it's like, no, there's nobody right now unless they have some weird, very specific jock strap fetish that looked at that and was like, oh yeah. They did do an underwater shot. And I have to say, if you're going to be almost nude, being shot underwater helps. Because
yes, that's true.
Yeah. Yep. So there's a little pro tip for anyone out there. You're going to have pictures, do it underwater. The water helps just lift anything that might sag.
I like how much they're embracing the headband this season. I am a big fan of the sweat headband around the head for any sporting activity that they do. I liked that.
So at some point, Riley and Spencer get going, and Riley elbowed Spencer. Riley said Spencer's face ran into my elbow. Thoughts on this?
There's a lot of testosterone in that pool. Ugh. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just so unimpressed with that behavior as an overall. And like, also what do you think that gains? Like, that's not going to make her like you more.
Right.
At least I would hope that she has higher standards than that. Like, oh, wow, he fought someone for me. What a hero. No, absolutely not.
I feel like Spencer really hammed it up. Like he was like, I've been hit in the face before. I played sports, and it's like, you kind of like, you don't go over and get medical. Although I think Spencer might be a model, and it was very early on in my life that it was like, you're not messing a lot up there, Bill. Just let it happen. Where he, like, that's his moneymaker. That'd be the equivalent of me getting like hit in the hand so I can't type for articles or anything.
Well, and she did stop and go over and nurse him. So he got what he wanted out of it because he got a little more special attention from her.
The only thing that would have made it better is if he would have looked at the camera and like nodded. Now I like your conspiracy theory. Like,
oh yeah, it's real. It's happening. Now you'll watch it every time and you'll count how many times he looks at the camera.
the amount of emotional labor that she has invested in these guys who literally have done nothing for her at this point makes me so angry. Like going over and comforting him, and like, you know, all these crybabies who were like, Claire was so mean and bad, you know, like that is not her fault. That is not her job. They have medical professionals on the scene. You know,
See, and that is how I know I would not be good on that show, because I was raised in a house where are you bleeding? You're fine. If you are bleeding, you're fine.
Like
so
Ivan Drago
like
from
I
Rocky
would have looked over there and been like, get back in the pool. Like, so that's why I wouldn't be good on this show.
Kim's going full Ivan Drago from Rocky IV.
Kind of.
Guys,
that is the Hanna way.
So Blake once again loses. Blake Monar, he loses, and there was a shot, like if you caught it, right as they went out, like he just looks dejected.
He looked so sad.
Knowing that he is gone. Is he going to make it out of this alive, like intact mentally? Like,
so I follow him on Instagram, and he posts, and because of, I mean, he's a wildlife person. That's his job in Canada. But he posts a lot of pictures with like birds and wild Canadian animals. And I just hope that he finds his Canadian bride who also loves birds and animals.
that's a good point. I'm not sure, and I don't know a lot about Tayshia, other than she travels a lot and she's kind of an Instagram influencer. I'm not sure that they are the match that
right.
is made in heaven. Like I feel like he's going to want to do a lot of outdoor stuff,
and she wants to take pictures outdoors, so they
Right.
do have that in common.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And then like
the heart.
back into the air conditioned.
Absolutely.
Well,
So
isn't
then
she from Orange County, which is like the exact opposite world of rural Canada?
yeah, I don't think she's a big, maybe she is, so I shouldn't be making, I have not seen any evidence that she does a lot of backpacking or long outdoor stays. So they go into the after party. How is the communication with the guys? What do we think? Easy seemed excited, but I felt like there wasn't a ton of like substance to what Easy said. He was like, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, he seemed more communicative with Claire. Like, I'm all in on Easy. If Easy wants to give me a call after this is all over, I say yes. But I don't think that I was surprised that he got the rose, because I didn't feel like they had the kind of interaction that warranted it.
Yeah, he's also probably one of my favorites. He's like charming in like an effortless type of way. So I'm wondering if that wasn't something that like they connected on, you know, just because he was endearing. I don't know. He didn't do much.
Mm-hmm.
But then she gave him the rose, so.
Right.
There you
So
go.
maybe something happened off camera that we didn't see.
That camera catches everything. They're not shy about like.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're gonna go like get a quickie in the closet, they're gonna catch you. So.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's true. That's true.
She did ask a lot of the guys, why are you single? So I thought that was kind of an interesting question. One, is it a fair question? And then she disclosed that she's divorced, and so it makes a little bit more sense maybe what she's getting at, like, you know, but it's an interesting question to me because they're all fairly attractive people, but they all are single on a show where they're kind of like vying for one person's, like, I feel like none of them probably have a problem getting a date if they want it.
Right.
I think that question is super funny just because like asking someone why are you still single is like what's your crazy, essentially.
Right. Yes.
Like where, you know, what's your problem? Like what's your deal? And I think that question is weird for a first interaction, especially just because it's like then if somebody says something that you don't like, is that automatically a reason to count them out, you know? Or I don't know. I have such a hard time with that one because it feels like it's an automatic disqualifier based on something that you don't know enough about to determine if that's like an actual disqualifier based on everything else about that person that you've yet to understand.
I also hate that question because first of all, you don't know why you're still single. There's a lot of things that are happening in the world that are making what you're living at that one moment exactly what's happening at that one moment. And so I also did not like that she asked them all of that. Because did any of them, I can't remember, did any of them turn around and be like, well, then why are you single? Like, you can't ask that question and not expect to get it back, I think.
That's a really good point, though, Ellie. I never thought about that. But like, in a way, it's basically saying I'm too lazy or I don't want to invest the time to figure out why you're crazy. And everyone's got their things, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's a fun scavenger hunt to figure out what your partner is going to do that's a little bit off the wall and what you're going to do. And it's kind of like, tell me up front, and I need to decide, is this enough that I'm willing to invest my time in? And it's kind of an unfair question. Also, you probably have blind spots for your crazy a little bit.
I was going to say, do you know what your own crazy is? I don't know that we know what our own crazy is.
I have a couple, but I'm sure there's many more that I'm like totally blind to. So
I was thinking that exact same thing. I can name a couple, but I don't know that I know all like 14 of them. So.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
and also if you knew why you were still single, wouldn't you be actively doing things to change that? You know, like it.
Or you would, yeah, that's a good point. If it was a deal breaker, you'd come right out and be like, hey, here's my thing. You either like it or you don't. Like, let's get it out of the way. But if you're not saying it up front, then
yeah.
Oh, good point.
Yeah, that is a very good point.
Okay. Her and Spencer and Riley, they seem to have a rivalry. We kind of covered it. Anything else you want to add other than it seems like primates throwing poop at each other sometime? Like, I don't.
Yeah, it's very unnecessary. Like, don't act like that. It is not impressive to women. We do not enjoy seeing that. It is the most off-putting thing I can think of. So they need to stop.
Yeah, in every season of this show I've watched, there's always been some sort of rivalry that is created between, you know, two of the contestants. I always like the women's ones are so funny because they're kind of like, she's such a bitch, and then the men's ones are like super hyper masculine, like, God, what a douche, you know, and like it's not. They never do anything for the show.
I did make a note that Kenny called Spencer a douche. Kenny, the manager of the boy band, who's got like the gelled up like Johnny Bravo hair, was like, "You're a douche." And it's like, I don't know, Kenny. Maybe not the road you want to go gliding on. Yeah.
The fact that you just called his hair Johnny Bravo hair, and yes, it absolutely is Johnny Bravo hair. He is just the epitome of, I think, a douche. So the fact that he's calling someone else that is classic.
When he wears like the leather bracelets and has the singular chest tattoo, like the man has not evolved his style since 2004, and that is like a peak douche era. And so he's got nothing to say.
That is true. That was like the highest level.
That was the highest level of douche.
Like Green Day-esque douche.
So Jason leaves. Anything we want to put on that other than I thought that was a amazing display of bro emotional support. Which one thing in research we find is that men tend to die much earlier when their partner passes away than if a woman's partner dies, if they're in a heterosexual relationship. And a lot of the theory to that is that men are really bad at finding emotional support outside of their spouse. So if nothing else from that, I was kind of like, oh, this is good for guys to be like seeing this, that it's like, even if it was a bit bro-ish, like, man, you almost made it to the end zone and then you fumbled, kicked a punt, or whatever metaphor they.
So this has nothing to do with Jason's emotional stability, but I noticed that I like that Tayshia just hangs out in her hotel room in like a very dressed up dress. And two, I did notice that the dress that she's wearing when Jason is telling her that she's leaving is the dress that she wears on her fireworks part of the date with Brendan. So either they filmed those on the same night, or she really likes that dress and she wore it 2 nights in a row.
See, that is something I would never notice as a guy, like just right over my head. So.
I caught it immediately when I watched it again, and I went, "Oh, that is the same dress."
I felt like Jason
cut, and he totally was trying to stare at her chest and not stare at her chest when he was telling her.
I feel like he was doing everything in his power not to look down, like so much that I was waiting for like a nosebleed for him because it was so hard not to look. All right, last date with Brendan. This is how the show ended up. They ride horses around the resorts. Who cleaned up all the poop like that? How mad would you be if you were staying at that resort, like just a random guest, and you're like, you go out to the pool and you're like, what the hell is this? There's crap all over.
There's some poor intern or production associate had to follow in that wheelbarrow that you always see at parades and clean up after both of those horses. Oy.
How much is La Quinta being paid for this, by the way? Like, they got to be making bank.
I hope so.
I genuinely just feel so bad for the people on this season because they are getting so many less perks out of this whole thing. Like, like the room service can only do so much, and like, the resort can only be so nice, whereas these other people have gotten flown around the world.
Yeah, that would have been a helicopter date to like go ride horses on the Grand Canyon. Instead, they're like, we're gonna take you around the damn La Quinta.
Yeah. And Chris Harrison, MVP of the episode, running around the resort giving them little treats. And I love Brendan kept going, I really wish Chris would just go away. Every time I try to lean in for a kiss, there's Chris.
Major C blocking him. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, that I feel like he's done more this season than he's done like all of the seasons combined, where he comes in and is like, this is the last rose. Like he's surpassed all of those this season.
My roommates and I were talking about this earlier this morning when I was catching up on the show. And honestly, like, Chris Harrison deserves to be paid more than the president of the United States. I think he's done more for the American people. Like, he has contributed so much. I love that man. He's so funny. He is such a pot stirrer, and him like running around like giving them all the little things was iconic, especially because Brendan looked like such a little dork with like the strap underneath his chin. Meanwhile, Tayshia looked like gorgeous, like her hair blowing in the breeze, and like the white shirt and the tan hat, and he just looked like a massive dweeb.
I feel like I would like to see one bad picture of Tayshia. Like, I don't know if you ever watched How I Met Your Mother, but there was like this running joke that Barney could never take a bad picture. And I feel like that's how she is. It's like she'll be like drenched, mascara running down, they'll take a picture and she'll be like perfect,
I mean, she looked good after being in the pool, and nobody looks good when they climb out of the pool. Your hair is matted. She definitely, I don't think she can take a bad picture.
So we talked about the Why Are You Still Single? They both disclosed divorce. What do we think about that for a first date discussion? We talk a lot about this. I act like this program's been on for years. Like our podcast covers this in depth, but we'll do it again, guys. No, we talk about disclosure and appropriate disclosure on dates, but then you're in this weird situation where they know. Any thoughts? How did it feel to you all? I thought it felt authentic. I thought it was like, okay.
I think I would want to know pretty early on. I mean, I don't know. I'm not dating to marry anybody. But I think that like it's a good point of disclosure because it shows like a level of emotional maturity to be able to have a conversation about your divorce that's not, oh, my bitch of an ex-wife, like that kind of thing. Because I mean, they both were like, just got married really young, and like it wasn't working. They were both very authentic about it. And I think that the way that they had the conversation was totally appropriate and like showed like a more real side of both of them.
I agree 100%. I think if either one of them had gone on about like all the horrible things about their ex, or like too much information about their marriage before the divorce, I think that would be inappropriate. But I do think it's nice to just kind of lay out on the table, hey, I've been divorced. This, he didn't even have to say why. That was kind of, that was a nice thing to say. But I don't think you owe the person you're on a date with to even say why you're divorced. Because if you are divorced because you cheated on your spouse, you probably don't want the person that you're on a date with to know that you are divorced because you cheated on your spouse, because then that person will be like, oh, never mind, you're a dirty cheater. But if it's just, hey, I got married young, we shouldn't have gotten married, we are divorced, especially if they're still amicable, like that's great. That tells me that you're a super mature adult human being. And then you can go off and talk about all the other things you have in common besides just divorce. But so I think they both handled it very well.
Yeah. So wrapping it up, favorite memes, favorite gifs, anyone out there that you really liked that you want to give a shout out that people can go find?
Oh, I saw something on BuzzFeed, and it was basically what we were talking about with the literal bare minimum of doing it. And so let me see if I can find it real quick while you guys chat.
If you want to go search for one, the contestants as cartoon characters on Twitter, which I will post. We have a blog spot now, so I will post it on there. But it is pretty amazing. And Blake Moynes looks exactly like the lion from Madagascar. And they have like a side-by-side picture. And it is like, oh, wow. I can't believe I didn't.
Yes, he does.
Look at Jordan as Chicken Little.
Yep. And it is a long one too.
Somebody looks like Wreck-It Ralph. Oh, Ed.
Ed.
Yeah,
Ed.
He looks like the Wreck-It Ralph guy.
Which is also one of my favorite things that's going around the internet is every time Ed shows up, everybody on Twitter is like, who's Ed? Where is this guy been? And it's true. He is the one who is blowing bubbles in his beer. And then in one of the promos, he's like holding a baby and like no explanation. And I feel like that's going to be Ed's 15 minutes of fame, is the guy no one knows except for doing weird stuff and then getting the boot.
So I did find the fact that Bennett also doesn't like Noah's mustache does confirm to me that I should have I was anti Bennett when they posted the pictures of the bachelors, because he just looked like everybody I interacted with when I lived in Boston. But having gotten to know him over the last few weeks, I am a fan of Bennett, and so the fact that he also hates Noah's mustache makes me very happy.
Did you see the one that was, it was Chris Harrison and he said, so babies? And it was at the same time, Claire saying, not until after we get married, and Dale saying, whatever. That was so funny. I was like, that is the worst response you could get from someone that you think you want to have children with.
Oh man, yeah, because kids are a lot of work. I don't have them. But man, well.
So I did find there's one with Snoop Dogg. It says me watching Claire cry that Dale showed up for the millionth time, and Snoop Dogg's holding up a sign that says that is the bare minimum. Like, again, showing up is not. I don't know. That bothers me more than I think anything else on the show right now.
So front runners.
Ooh.
Who do we got? Brendan seemed like a very real person. I liked him. I liked their interaction, and he was also like very respectful, which also, once again, the bar is on the floor. But I liked him a lot.
I think Zach is also a contender. And I also like that he did yoga before, he stretched before they played splash ball, so he didn't pull a muscle. That was nice too.
I forgot about that.
I am still rooting for Joe. I really want Joe.
Yeah.
I just feel like Joe is not getting a good rap. I
like
don't
Joe
think
too.
Spencer. I feel like Spencer is going to be the foil all season, and then he's going to go. And go ahead, Kim.
So do you think they brought in those 4 to be the foil because the bro squad is so tight after only 1 week that there's not an antagonizer in that group of 16, because they've kind of gone through a traumatic experience together of losing Claire. And so they had to bring in, they probably needed more numbers to fill out the rest of the episodes, but they had to bring in a couple people that would blow things up because the other 16 are already so tight together.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think they definitely picked guys who would come in and people would be like, oh God.
Mm-hmm.
Like Spencer has a very specific reason for being there.
Well, and like their shared like hatred for Claire, like as an entity, is really what has brought them so close. Which like
that's true.
No one brings people together like a common enemy.
Right.
True that.
So,
yeah.
Episode in one sentence.
showing up is the bare minimum.
Oh, nice. I like it.
Yeah, mine was gonna be the bars on the floor.
Oh man. I'm gonna go. I'm trapped and I have nowhere to go. So that's it. I don't have to tell you to vote. So last word, Kim, you got anything you want to put out in the last word?
I don't. Just everybody be safe. The numbers are going up here in Iowa and everywhere else. So please make good choices. Wear a mask. It is not oppressive. And have a fantastic week.
Ellie, you get the last word.
I would just like to give a shout out to the members of the Blueberry House for supporting me throughout this new bachelorette journey. Those are my roommates. So thank you all. And thanks for having me on the show. It was super fun.
Thank you. All right, everyone.
Thanks, Bill.
Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
You've been listening to Bachademia with your hosts, Doctors Daniel Dick McGew and Bill Henniger. All opinions expressed on this show are solely the opinion of the person who spoke them. If you like our podcast, please consider following us, leaving us a 5-star rating, and a positive review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Also, please share with your friends, family, and other ardent Bachelor content lovers. If you have comments or questions you would like us to address on the show, you can email us at bachademia@gmail.com or on the Twitter with the handle @Bachademia. Thanks for listening.